Hello, everybody. My name is Bruce Montgomery, and this is my colleague, Tracy Priest.
Hello, everyone.
And we're with The Road to Retail. On our podcast, Tracy and I hope to offer insights and ideas for how emerging small and challenger CPG, consumer packaged goods, brands can establish and grow their business.
Bruce and I have been working in CPG commercial operations for over 30 years, working on brands of all sizes. By commercial operations, we mean all aspects involved in establishing and growing brands across channels and platforms. On our show, we bring on guests that are brand founders, leaders, investors, as well as all kinds of suppliers to these emerging brands that are subject matter experts to share their unique insights with the audience.
To keep up with the show, please follow the Road to Retail podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Leave us a review and consider sharing the show with a friend or colleague that may benefit from the content. You can also check out our website at www.road2retail.com and follow The Road to Retail on LinkedIn. Let's get to today's episode. Looking to scale or launch your supplement or skincare brand? Eagle Labs Incorporated, based in Florida, offers full-service NSF-certified contract manufacturing of capsules, tablets, powders, liquids, gummies, and lotions. All of their manufacturing takes place in the USA. From R&D and formulation to packaging and fulfillment, Eagle Labs provides scalable, high-quality production that meets FDA and NSF standards. To learn more, contact Michael Law, Chief Commercial Officer at Eagle Labs at michael.law@eaglelabsinc.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Road to Retail. We've got a great episode today, but first of all, Bruce, great to see you, my friend.
Great to see you, Tracy. Great to see you and be on with another great guest and talk to the folks out there to help their small, emerging, and challenger brands find their way. So why don't you tell us who we have here today, Tracy, joining us?
Absolutely. So today on our show, we have Eli Moore. Eli is the former head of consumer analytics at the Coca-Cola Company. So Eli, welcome to the show, and thanks so much for joining us today. Looking forward to this episode all about AI and how it's changing the CPG world.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me on the show.
No problem. So before we get started, Eli, tell the audience just a little bit about you and your background and how you got here.
Yeah, so I've spent the past 17 years in CPG. Started my career doing trade analytics and sales strategy and forecasting for a small little boutique consultancy called Customer Marketing Group. And I got to do a lot of cool things there, go on sales calls with nearly every retailer in North America. I worked in most categories with companies like Del Monte, Wrigley, Essity, Cliff, Post Foods, and a lot of others. And those first 7 years really gave me a good foundation for the CPG industry, but also is what made me fall in love with the industry. I think we get to do so many cool things, and there's nothing like going and seeing the thing that you're working on in the store and enjoyed by all your friends and consumers. And I remember in those moments doing account planning or doing trade optimizations. A marketer would ask me something like, okay, that's cool that we've optimized our P&L. Like, how do we grow our baseline? And I realized I know nothing about marketing. And that kind of led me into the second part of my career where I've spent the last few years working at the Coca-Cola Company. Started off doing marketing mix modeling for Minute Maid, Simply, Fairlife, kind of our nutrition portfolio. Moved into primary research, learned a lot about primary research. I took what I like to call a short little paid vacation to Deloitte, where I did some data science work and learned a lot about machine learning and things like that. Really kind of rounding out my analytics experience before I came back to Coke and did a lot of kind of global consumer analytics. So a lot of focus on consumer the last 4 years. And so that's kind of been my career to date. And yeah.
Love it. Awesome background. Awesome background. So kind of let's jump in here a little bit and tell our audience a little bit about how, in your opinion, AI is changing the CPG industry. It's in the news all the time, and you read a lot about it. So tell us, you've been in it in that world for a
Yeah.
little while now. So tell us a little bit about what you think is going to be changing here as we see it right before our eyes.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like changing on a daily basis, right? I mean, anyone who's kind of getting into this stuff, it's like one thing that's really neat one week, like a week later, all of a sudden there's something better. And so it's tough to like keep up with it, honestly. But there's so many things going on. I mean, I think that there's a lot of different areas that we could talk about. And as we do, and before we do for the rest of this conversation, I thought it would be good to define AI and what I mean when I'm talking about AI, because I think a lot of people they say AI and what they mean is generative AI. They mean things like ChatGPT. They mean things that create video, that create audio, that create text, that create images, and we're going to talk a lot about that. But I think that it's important to always think about AI more broadly because there's a lot of technology out there. There's a lot of things that are going on that you can leverage that's part of AI that may not necessarily it may not make a picture for you or a video, but there's gonna be lots of cool things, and we're seeing a lot of this in the industry that we'll talk about. So I'm talking broadly about all of AI, I guess. Um, I think that the generative AI space is something that gets a lot of attention, and the reason is because for the longest time, when people looked at when there was all this development in AI going on over the last, 10, 20, 30 years or so, like, I mean, honestly, we've been seeing a lot of development, especially with increase in compute and all that kind of stuff. The most of it was mathematical, and most people are not fluent in mathematics. But as soon as something like ChatGPT came out and it was in English, and you could literally ask a question in English to your computer and you could get an answer back in English, all of a sudden people's minds were blown because prior to that, really all of the AI innovation was only accessible to people that spoke English or some programming language, right? So that really opened the door to all of the things that are going on and that have been going on for a long time. And so I think for those people who haven't been involved in like programming or a math role or something like that, their minds are even more blown because all of a sudden they're seeing things that they didn't even realize, like they think it all happened at once. And the reality is it's kind of been slowly building over the last couple of decades. But um, I thought a little bit about in the CPG space, there's so many things we could talk about, like how AI is impacting the CPG space. And I think largely you can bucket it in three areas. And we won't talk about these areas specifically, but I think it's important to mention them because some people will hear people talk about this. The first is synthetic data. You'll hear that phrase used a lot in the industry, and we're talking about basically generating new information when you don't even have that information. So that's what we're talking about. You'll hear people talk about large language models or agentic AI. What they're talking about is they're talking about things like ChatGPT, where you're going in and maybe you're typing to it or you're talking to it and it's converting it to text and then it's doing something on the back end for you. And then we'll talk a little bit about generative AI and text technically like LLMs are generative, but specifically generative audio, video, images. I think that's a place that's going to have a big impact in AI too. And how it impacts you depends a lot on the role that you're in. So, for example, let's start with a salesperson. If you're a salesperson, you probably don't really care that much about generative AI's ability to make a new advertisement or an image, right? Because like that's not what you're doing every day. And so there's a lot of different ways that I think a salesperson can use it. But one thing that I thought was is kind of neat that I heard about just recently was there was a company that built basically these AI avatars. And these AI avatars would be trained to behave like your buyer. And so the salesperson would then go practice their sales pitch against this buyer, right? And the buyer would ask them follow-up questions, or maybe the buyer would be trained for that specific meeting to not be interested, or to be bored, or to be disengaging, or maybe be angry. I've been in a sales call where someone literally picked up a chair and threw it against a wall. I swear to God. So I mean, like these things happen, right? Like, and so having that experience, I think, is it going to answer all the questions or create all the questions that you're going to get asked in a sales call? Absolutely not. But does it make your salesperson feel more confident? Does it help them have a little bit better practice and be a little bit more prepared for that meeting? I think so. And so I think some technologies like that are being developed and you're going to see it more accessible to people. And that's something that almost anyone can use, that I think is going to drive a lot of value and help you out.
So Eli, I'm sorry, as we get into this, um, and you've already touched on some things that I think we'll get to in more depth in a moment, but allay some fears here from our small emerging challenger brand audience. So how can AI help these smaller organizations or smaller brands, build their business using AI without having a gargantuan budget, six guys
Yeah.
like you, and they don't have a computer engineering degree from MIT or have Elon Musk, in a dark room with 14 monitors.
I think the thing about AI that it actually is what's amazing about it is that it creates scale and efficiency at almost no cost. I mean, it's incredibly cheap. I mean, so a lot of people will say, "Well, how do I get started with AI?" And they're thinking like, "Do I need to take a class? Like, should I go watch videos? Should I go get an MBA in AI or something?" No, just go get a ChatGPT login. I'm blown away at how many people want to do something with AI and yet have never used ChatGPT. Like it blows my mind. It reminds me of the day when Google came out. This is telling a little bit about my life and my age, but when Google search came out, I remember talking to someone and they said, I just wish I knew how to use Google search. Doesn't that sound absolutely insane today? Right? Like, can you imagine anyone thinking like, I just wish I knew how to use Google search? It's like you just type the thing that you want. And that's what AI does. Like ChatGPT, you just talk to it, just like you're talking to a human. And I think that that's the most important place to start. You don't need to spend insane amounts of money to get started with AI, and you can generate a lot of value out of that. You can have conversations with it about your brand. You can say, hey, here's a picture of my brand, and I really want to make it resonate more with teenagers. What would you do? What are your recommendations? Right? It costs nothing to do that. Now you could get a pro license at ChatGPT. Okay, it costs $20 a month, right? Most small brands can probably afford that. So I think that there's a lot of entry level things that you can do. You don't need to go have massive custom systems built for your brand and things like that. Additionally, AI is making a lot of things that previously were only available to large companies because of the cost, making it more accessible. So I think that you're going to see a lot of research, a lot of consumer insight data, things like that that traditionally would have only been available to a really large brand, much more available to small brands because people can offer it at scale. So the companies like Ipsos and Burke, like they can offer services that previously were so expensive to create that they could only build them for, the Coca-Colas of the world. They can offer those kinds of services now to smaller brands as well. So something else to look at.
Yeah, that leads us into our data question.
I
Go,
know. So
Trace.
thank you for the serving that up. So tell us a little bit about how AI can clean and analyze, data, and specifically, can AI really understand my category and my consumer? And
Yeah.
I think you tell me, but I think the answer is you can train AI to do that. But you tell us. I'm not an
And
AI
hey,
expert.
sorry, Eli, one other thing just to qualify Tracy's question that I think could be helpful for brands that are really just getting started or starting to get some scale and now really needing to buy and understand some data. Tell folks why the data might not be clean because people might be like, what? I've just paid all this money to Spins or IRI or
Yeah.
Nielsen and it might not be right. What the
Yeah.
hell?
Yeah, that's a great. Okay, so I'll touch on a few of those things. So this is one of the most common questions I get asked, like, is can AI clean my data? And people are coming from different places when they're asking this question. But I think what ultimately people want, well, I'll tell a story to show what I think people want. I was in a meeting with and I was listening to someone who's like in the C-suite, right, at a big company talking um about AI and where AI is at today. And the person said, they said, tech is selling us a big bill of goods because they're acting like AI can do all these things, but it can't because I can't just tell it to go look at my data and clean and organize it and build all this stuff for me and build all these PowerPoints for me and answer my business question and do and like what he really wanted was he wants the easy button to already exist, right? He wants the button where he just pushes a button and it just magically does everything. AI is not magic. I think that's important, right? So anyone who works in this space knows that AI is math. is actually what it is. And so if your data is complete garbage or you don't even have data, it's not going to be very good. And so let's talk about can it help you with category analytics, for example, and why would it not be able to? And what do we mean when we say garbage data? I shouldn't say garbage data, but what do we mean when data maybe is not as clean as we need it to be? So a great example, let's say that you're working on the NHB category at HEB, right? I'm just picking one random, like a random category, and you're going
What's
to the
What's
yeah,
NHB?
naturally healthy beverages. So
Okay.
think about like if you've ever been in an HEB or a lot of grocery stores have this section. It's a section with various health products, right? Things that are kind of on trend. It could be kombuchas, it could be the naked juices, it could be whatever it is. And so you go to the buyer of this section, and oftentimes, I think in this case, the buyer may also be buying fruit bowls and things like that. Like there's lots of different things that they're buying. When you buy data from, say, Nielsen or Spins or somebody else, they're structuring data so that it makes sense when you look at it across the entire country. But they're not structuring the data so that it makes sense for how HEB is specifically structured and how that buyer is specifically buying and what that buyer's incentives are, right? So you may have to kind of recategorize products so that they are relevant to that category buyer. And so, the categories that you see in Spins or the categories you see in Nielsen may not actually be exactly the categories that HEB is managing in the way that they're managing it. You may be talking to the person about a product. If you only use their categories, the Nielsen Spins, you may not talk about all the products that are relevant to that buyer, or you may talk about products that are completely irrelevant to that buyer. And so this is a nuance, sometimes like it feels like a nuance, but if you've been in these meetings, you know that it's really important to go talk to the buyer about things the buyer actually cares about. And so that's a good example of maybe your data is not perfectly as clean as it needs to be, and you need to create some sort of, imagine it simply. You need to add a column, right? You have a list of all these products. You need to add a column that says which are the products that we want to look at, which are the products that the buyer cares about, that kind of stuff. That's a super simple example, but that's the kind of work that is so important for a human to do because it's information that hasn't been digitized. What I mean is it's knowledge, it could be data, but it isn't data today. It's something that exists in our collective consciousness, right? Like we have a relationship with the buyer at HEB. The guy tells us what products he's responsible for. Maybe next year they change it. Maybe they move the product to a different part of the store and someone else is responsible for that now. And like those things are not always perfectly digitized into a data set. And so you're going to have to constantly think about how do I make sure that my data is structured for that. Other things that are not digitized. What is that buyer interested in? What is that buyer's objectives? What is he trying to do? Right? If you just go to an AI, it kind of reminds me of like when I used to do consulting, we would go in and we would meet with someone and we would say, what are your objectives this year? And they would say something like, I want to grow revenue and volume and profit. And I want my margins to increase. And it's like, okay, like you want everything, right? Like the reality is like most of the time that's not feasible. And so you have to figure out what are your constraints and what are the things that are most important to you and what are the things that you really want to achieve. And I think in the same way, those are the things that don't exist inside of data. So if you ask AI, how can I use my product to help my category manager grow his business? Like maybe you want to try to position your product as something that is additive to his category. It can give you examples, but you haven't told it what the buyer's objectives are, right? You haven't told it that the buyer is really interested in driving volume or the buyer is really interested in recruiting some new demographic, or you haven't told it that the buyer needs products that have higher margin, right? Like you don't know. And so you have to be able to bring that information in. And that's the thing that's oftentimes missing. And so when people start with AI, they don't think about the fact that AI only knows what's publicly available. It's read all the textbooks. It's read the whole internet, right? It's been trained on mathematics, but it doesn't understand your category. It doesn't understand your business. It doesn't understand your buyer and their personality. It doesn't know if the buyer got promoted last year and is trying to look like a rock star, or if he's about to retire and he's just kind of like, I just want to not disrupt anything and take any risks. It doesn't know these things. And so that's an important thing to take into any sort of use case with AI, because if you can provide it the right context, it can provide you a much better answer, as it kind of helps you and advise you and guides you on how to do things.
So Eli,
So
yeah, go ahead, Bruce. I'll let you go.
No, you ask your question because I was ready to go to the next topic. If
Okay,
you
so
have a
I
follow-up,
just want to
go.
clarify something. So really what you're saying is that the data that you have and your specific buyer situation and the category and how they define it, AI help you, what I would say, customize all of that to be specific to a retailer. Is that probably an accurate?
I would say AI can do a great job of helping you do the analysis as long as you give it the right information, right? That's the critical thing. Like, because I think a lot of the times people don't realize that the things that they have in their brain, right? The AI doesn't magically know it. So like they'll ask it a question, they'll get a poor response back, and then they'll use that as an example of, see, AI is no good. And it's like you asked a terrible question and you didn't give it any context, right? And so I
Right.
think that that's where, and so when people get to this whole cleaning data and can AI clean our data, what they really are trying to get at is can AI digitize things that aren't digital? Like, can it literally take things out of people's brains and put it into the computer? And can AI take the data that's a complete mess? We've probably, in some cases, especially with larger companies, they've probably neglected their data for more than 30 years, and at this point they're overwhelmed, and they want it fixed, and so they're looking for the easy button. Is there a button that I can click that'll just magically make everything perfect? And that's just not that will never exist. And a big reason for that is that it comes down to decisions, right? That we talked about, like the category manager and which products does he manage. That might change every year. At the Coca-Cola company, one product that rolls up into one particular manager's portfolio may change the next year. You may have a salesperson who's responsible for the West Coast and a salesperson that's responsible for the East Coast today as a small manufacturer. And then your business grows and you're like, I need three salespeople. And you have to split and you go, someone needs to manage this middle section. Or maybe you're like, I need a Walmart specific sales guy, right? Like your business is going to evolve, and that creates new information. And unless you're feeding that kind of information into the way that you use AI, it's not always going to know it. So I think just keeping that in your mind as you're thinking about how to leverage these tools is really important. Sometimes putting that new information in is going to cost more than just letting a human do it. So you
Yeah.
got to think
So,
about the
folks,
pros and cons there.
Yeah.
sorry, Eli. So, folks, a couple of things Eli said that you've heard before here. So, the first one, well, you haven't heard this one before. AI is math, not magic. So, don't think you can go ask it as football season's coming up, like, will the Rams cover? But that's probably unknowable. But the other thing Eli said, which Tracy and I talk about a lot with all of our guests, is you have to know your individual retailer as you grow your business. Their strategies are different. Their margin requirements are different. Their velocity hurdles are different. And what that person is trying to accomplish. And then Eli also mentioned some of the softer things that you have to know. Is this person about to go out on maternity? Are they 4 months from retiring? Did they just land on this desk and they don't know up from down? And they're kind of going to take this first sales cycle to kind of learn. So they might not be Action Jackson, going to make lots of changes. So these are all the things that you still need to work and probe and use your human skills, because I can't ask what Eli the buyer is hoping to achieve this year unless I ask him. All right, so Eli, let's move on here a little bit. So, how should a small emerging brand think about AI? And when we had our pre-meeting about the show, you mentioned a couple of things. So maybe you could give an example of each of these. You talked about utilizing it to increase speed, scale, and efficiency. So how might our, emerging brand audience hit
Yeah.
on those three things?
Yeah, I think that, the old adage, you can have speed, scale, or efficiency, but you can't have all three, right? I think that is in the world of AI is not quite as relevant as it used to be. It still exists, but it's somewhat blown up because that's what AI does. AI does things faster, it can do it broader, and it can do it more efficiently at a lower cost than humans. And for a lot of things, not everything, but for a lot of things. So we talked already a little bit about salespeople and how salespeople can use this. There's a lot of other roles and a lot of other things that we're trying to accomplish inside of a CPG style business. And so let's talk a little bit about marketers, because I think marketers sometimes is another good example of where you can use AI to drive one of these three. And so, a lot of the times people look at marketing, they look at these big companies and they're running TV ads and they're running digital ads and they're running radio ads and they got banners and they got a stadium named after them and all these things. And it's like, I can't compete with that, right? And you're absolutely right. You can't. You don't have the scale and you don't have the budget to do that, but you don't need it. You can try to be as efficient as you can in your space. And so where I think AI can help in this space is let's start with like generative audio, video, and imaging. Um, in the past, if you needed to create some sort of compelling advertisement, you might need to hire a creative agency. You might need to hire somebody who is really good at Photoshop. You might need to hire somebody who not only can create like a great photograph, but maybe understands or a video, but they understand how to do storytelling. Like that can get really expensive really fast if you're trying to do some form of advertising. And in the digital space, it gets a little bit easier, but it still is tough. And I see a lot of opportunity here with generative AI helping small businesses because it can generate pictures for you. It can generate video for you. It can generate audio for you. It can write a script. And that doesn't mean that you should use its script right out of the box, right? If you ask AI to write a 30-second commercial script for your brand, you probably need to tweak it. You probably need to iterate with it, things like that, right? Like what comes directly out of the machine is probably not what you should put in front of a consumer. But it's fairly almost free, right? Like it's almost free advice from something that has seen everything that's available on the internet. So you're going to get a lot of great feedback and input and ideas from doing that. Now, this doesn't mean it can replace all creativity. I think that, it's important to remember that AI can only produce what it's seen before and so if the data doesn't exist, it can't create that. So, I think we have to think about our role as humans. Like we still can come up with new ideas and new ways of thinking that no one else has thought of. And so that innovation, that new idea, that new way of speaking to your consumer that maybe has never been done before, you might come up with a great idea that there's no way that the generative AI is going to get there yet. Maybe it does in the future, but it's not yet. So that's something that's kind of important. So I think that tells you a little bit about how you can leverage it on the marketing space to drive that scale, speed, and efficiency. Um, the speed thing I think is probably the most important that I really hit on there is like that iterative nature. It allows you to iterate really quickly. Like the fact that you can just take an image, put it up there, or maybe you have like a list of ideas for innovations and you go, hey, here's a list of 10 ideas that I have for innovations. What do you think? Right? Within 30 seconds, you have someone else's opinion for free, right? It's a machine. And is it going to be right? Sometimes no. But at least it allows you to iterate very, very quickly. Whereas in the past, that would have been impossible to do. You would have had to go pay somebody and hire somebody to analyze it, to run a full study. So you can kind of whittle things down. And then maybe you get down to 2 or 3 innovation ideas and you go, these are the ones that I want to go formally test with consumers. Right. And so it just makes it much, much cheaper and much more affordable to do.
That's really
that just a few examples.
So one other thing, folks, that Eli said, which I've experienced, I have nowhere near the credibility and depth of knowledge Eli does, but when he said about using these AI tools to perhaps, draft a memo to somebody or draft copy for a commercial or some sort of promotion, my view is, and Eli, correct me if you don't agree, I think it can be a helpful first draft, but I've been sent things that I know people used AI to generate and then did not proofread them because it uses words that people in our industry would never use.
That's right.
So it just to me, while that may have saved you some time, it at least raises a flag that I'm like, this person didn't even proofread.
Right.
And so I think you got to be careful. So I think
Totally.
that everything Eli just said is true. Getting that first draft done is usually pretty hard. So if you get that first draft and you review and tweak and kind of make it more Tracy than ChatGPT, I think then it has a lot more credibility when it lands in someone's inbox.
Yeah, I think that it always comes with the same tone, right? Like every response is going to have the same tone from ChatGPT, for example, whether you're asking it about CPG or if you're asking it about astrophysics. It doesn't matter what you're asking it about. it's always the same tone of message and the way that it talks to you. And so I think that that's really important, and you're hitting on the right topic, is that people need to use it as an advisor, an intelligent advisor, right? That can kind of coach them on things. But your tone is what sets you apart, especially in the brand space. And when you're trying to compete with other brands that, let's be frank, most of the time, your product, if you were talking about what's literally in the bottle, a lot of brands, the product next to it has something that's almost the same in the bottle, right? So, like, what is the differentiator? You have to have a differentiation in your brand. Like, that's your tone, that's the language that you use, it's the way that you communicate, it's the messaging, right? It's sometimes it's even your own personality. Like, if you're going into a sales environment, right? Like, how you represent your brand and the things that you say, that is what's compelling. And so I think that you're absolutely right. Like, you can't just default to using ChatGPT. Like, that's a surefire way to like lose any sort of brand recognition. But I think that it's an incredibly powerful tool because sometimes we don't think of things, right? Sometimes we write a story. I was working on a script for something personal that I started to write this script for a video that I was going to do, and it reordered the script. And I realized afterward when I read through it again, the reason it reordered it was it basically was doing the Simon Sinek thing. You need to start with why. You don't need to start with what you're doing. You need to start with why you're doing it because that's what's compelling to people. And it was brilliant, right? It was a brilliant feedback from a machine, right? And so, and I think it really made the thing that I was working on much more compelling. And so things like that are things that AI can pick up instantly that you may miss really easily. And so, and I think it makes us better.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, Tracy, I've been waiting for this one.
Yep. So there's all these AI tools out there, right? Chat GPT, Perplexity, Grok, Claude, Copilot, Gemini. How does a CPG founder, small brand person know which one to use?
Yeah.
And do they just pick one and stay with that? Do they try them all? What is your insight into that?
Yeah, there's a ton, and new ones are popping up every single day,
Yes.
right? I mean, I was looking at generative video a week ago, and at the time, the one that was the best was a Chinese company that produces these videos and stuff, or video avatars. And literally this week, I saw an article that's like this new one launched this week, and it can do things that the other one previously couldn't do, like make hand gestures, which was like not available in the one that was supposedly the best. Now the new one can do hand gestures. And so I mean, it's constantly changing. I think that if I had to pick one to start with, I'm very partial to ChatGPT and OpenAI. I think that the company itself, all of these people are brilliant. They know what they're doing, and everyone else is trying to play catch up and copycat. And so I highly recommend, at a minimum, having a ChatGPT subscription. When you go to ChatGPT, you can ask it. You can say, "Hey, I need to generate an image creative for my brand that I'm going to post on Facebook. I'll make it up, whatever it is you're trying to do. Can you give me a list of 10 AI tools that exist today based on recent data, like based on data this week, that you would recommend me using for this particular task?" And ChatGPT will tell you. It won't only recommend tools from ChatGPT. It'll give a list of all sorts of tools and other companies and other things that people are doing. And then you can go decide which one to use for that particular topic. But I think that's a great way to filter through stuff, is just using ChatGPT for that right off the bat. There's a lot of the time these AI tools, it kind of depends on what you're doing, right? And you can very quickly get overwhelmed because you can go, oh my gosh, like there's one tool for this and one tool for this and one tool for this and one tool for this. So I'm a big believer, like, you eat, how do with the phrase, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? So you go, okay, what is the most important thing that I need to do? Maybe I want to use or the thing that takes the majority of my time. I'm going to look for an AI tool that helps me do that part, right? I don't need an AI tool that helps me do the entire thing, but let's look for something that just helps with this one thing and just do a little at a time. And before long, you probably end up with 2, 3 tools, right? That are like your bread and butter that can do most of the things that you need it to do.
So,
Um,
good
it's
advice.
also kind of like, I mean, with any tool, right? Like, I mean, you think about like even the simplest example, like, I mean, how many different kinds of shovels are there, right? Like, You go to Lowe's or Home Depot and there's like 97 different shapes of shovels. But to be honest, it's like if you have just like a shovel, just a regular old shovel, like it can do most of the stuff you need, right? And so like let's start there. And then maybe if you go digging fence post, you need to get a spade or a whatever. But it's like, let's start simple.
Good
So
analogy.
the good news here I'm hearing is your reco would be start with ChatGPT because obviously AI, you're not going to realize any speed, scale, or efficiency if you're jacking around all day, pumping
That's
the
right.
same question into like seven of these things.
That's exactly right.
All
Yeah.
right, Eli, we're gonna have to probably reel you in on this one because this is a interesting topic. So, what's the coolest or most amazing thing in the AI world that you've seen that an emerging smaller brand could actually use? Again, if it's so cool that you get trapped, you're like, oh my gosh, I just burnt a whole day like figuring out how to make my avatar do hand gestures. Not sure you're gonna
Yeah.
sell more product that way.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Man, there's so many things I could talk about, like you said, and some of it depends on like what's cool for one person may not be cool for somebody else. But let me say this. I'll say like every brand probably has a website, even small, or every small company has a website, and they need to have it laid out in a way that looks beautiful, and they want it to be interactive and all these kinds of things. And I actually before when I was in college, I built websites for a living, so I know HTML. Like I literally used to go in and like code websites in HTML, and so maybe that's why I appreciate this even more so. And then as like tools got created, like Dreamweaver, I would like build, a website using like a tool that basically was doing the HTML in the background. There's AI tools out now where literally you can, if you just go to the AI tool and you say, build me a website, and here's all the criteria. Here's what I want it to look like. Here's an example link to another website that I want you to kind of use that as inspiration. Here are images that of my brand, my logo, the people in my company. Here's a list of my brand story. Like I can just tell you what my brand story. You can provide it all this information. It will build the entire website for you in like 5 minutes. I mean, it is mind blowing. And so, while it's not something that's like talking about how you sell or something like that, that's something I've seen recently that just blew my mind because I think there's a lot of this stuff that is very digital and technical that we assume like we'll never be able to do and that you have to have someone with extreme technical knowledge, and that is going away. Like you still need that technical knowledge to build stuff, but I think that it's making it much more accessible to people. And that's gonna translate into a lot of other things, right? Like I mean there's gonna be I mean if you for example you could use this exact same tool to say I want to build a tool where I give you an Excel file that looks like this, and you build a PowerPoint presentation for me, and it will literally build that program for you. I mean, it'll do all the coding, it'll set everything up for you. And so there's stuff like that that I think is going to be really groundbreaking because, stuff like that, companies used to spend millions of dollars with consulting companies to build these things. And now you can use something like Claude Code, which is kind of what I'm thinking about, and it'll do it for you. And it does require a little bit of technical knowledge, right? Like you need a little bit, but it's
Not a
it's
surprise.
definitely a game changer.
So I don't want to talk about this because then it wobbles into legal, but what you just said, Eli, I can't help but wonder if Bruce and Tracy ask ChatGPT or Claude Code, whatever you just said, to build a website or a PowerPoint, and it actually creates something unique. I wonder how you secure that IP for your company when you actually didn't do it, right? You just kind of put in a few really good prompts. Again, that's probably for another discussion, but I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
I was
Another
just
episode.
thinking, man,
I mean, obviously, this is a big topic, right? Like, I mean, people, even in the music space, right? Like when people were emulating other singers' voices, right? Like there's the debate going on there as well. Like, I mean, at some point, I think it does raise this question of like, what is intellectual property, right? And we got to figure out what that is, and also what do people value, right? Like, which properties do people actually value? Because
Well,
some properties,
luckily,
is it
luck,
intellectual property if you can instantaneously recreate it? Like, I don't
you
know.
know, luckily, America has no shortage of lawyers, so this
That's
gives
right. We
us.
got a lot of those. We got a lot of
They use ChatGPT to send their bills. Just send one.
those.
Okay, okay, Eli, we're rounding third, heading for home. So, who has had the greatest influence on your career to date? And, don't need to name names if you don't want to, but what did this person do for you that's really stuck with you over time? And you're like, gosh, they really invested a lot of time in me when I was green as grass, or they taught me how to really treat a client well, even if the client wasn't treating me well.
Man, I mean, I could name a lot of people because I've been really fortunate in my career to have been surrounded by people that are brilliant and just amazing humans, and they've done a lot for me. And I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for being around those people. But if I had to pick one, it's someone that you guys both know, and some of the your listeners will know, it's Stu Bishop. And so Stu Bishop is the CEO of Customer Marketing Group. When I got out of college, he's the guy that hired me and gave me my first job. And so my entire career, I really feel that I owe it to him. Like I wouldn't be working in the stuff that I'm working in if it wasn't for Stu giving this young college kid a chance that didn't know anything, right? And I hope that if nothing else sticks with people, that sticks with people, that the listeners and everyone else that watches this, they have the ability to completely change the course of somebody's life, right? When you give people a chance that maybe don't deserve it. I mean, I'm just a kid out of college, right? Like, what do I know? What do I know math. I knew how to do statistics. I knew how to run a regression. It's like, I mean, that's about it. And everything that I've learned really came from that opportunity that I had. The other thing that he did that's really stuck with me and is the way that he managed his company. So I got hired there in December of '07. And then, of course, the Great Recession happened, and business was really tough. It was already a small company, but we lost a lot of clients in a very short period of time, and there was zero reason for Stu to keep me around. I was the last one in. I might as well have been the first one out. But instead, he brought in his own personal money to pay my salary to keep me employed. And a lot of people hear that and they go, "Wow, that's amazing!" Like that's not how business works. And I don't think that's true. I think that that's how some people do business. And I think that you can really change people's lives, and you can inspire them to be greater people when you do things like that, right? When you make acts of kindness and things like that. So yeah, he's had a huge impact on me, and I try to be as good of a leader as he was.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. We know Stu well. So fun question, Eli,
Yeah.
as we round third and head home. So tell us, who is your favorite sports team, band, or brand, and why you follow them?
Oh man. Okay, so I'm like a sad sports fan. But I have two teams that I love. I love the Houston Astros, and I love the Texas A&M Aggies. And I say I'm a sad sports fan because of my love of the Texas A&M Aggie football team. They're like the Cubs of college football for anyone who doesn't follow football. We love football more than anybody else. We invest more money than most people, and yet we can't win to save our lives. And so it is just, I think we're cursed or something. I don't know what it is. And so I really question my sanity sometimes when I sit down and watch this team play. But yeah, I love that team. Fortunately, my Astros have had some good runs recently. I know that a lot of people hate them, and but you know what? Usually when you're doing well, people hate you. So the Yankees are hated by a lot of people. The Red Sox are hated by a lot of people. Dodgers are hated by a lot of people, and there's reason for that. So
Well,
they're a lot of fun to watch.
well,
The thing about the Astros that sticks is like, man, Jose Altuve, he's like what, like 5'7" or something, like, and he's a rock star. And I love that. I think it's inspirational to the little guy, right? Like you don't have, and that goes back to this business thing, right? Like you don't have to be the biggest guy or the fastest guy or whatever. Like if you work your tail off, and you got a little bit of talent, like you can do amazing things, and I think Jose Altuve is inspiration for that for all of us.
So there's two comments. One, there was a great photo at the All-Star game a couple years ago of Altuve standing next to Aaron Judge. So
Oh,
I didn't
Yeah,
know if it was baseball players or like two guys from the circus. I mean, it was such a
yeah,
disparity of size. And,
exactly.
and, and Eli, you know who else loves Texas A&M football?
I do.
Jimbo Fisher, because he gets paid a lot of money every 2 weeks.
that
Yes.
could be a whole nother episode, guys.
Yeah. Which
Anyway,
is a great business. I mean, this is a great parlay to business. In my opinion, if you make some massive investment in something, d- don't just view it as a sunk cost and throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, come on, like you know what I mean? Like, it's just such a poor use of resources.
Oh
Like,
man, I would have made that guy work in the ticket office till the end of his contract. There's
I
no
would have done
way.
something. Like,
Yeah.
it's like you don't renew a guy's contract for
well,
like whatever
he
billion
just
amount of
said
money,
just
and
came
then 2 years
out.
later, like you're fired. Like, come on, that's a waste of money.
He
All
just
right.
came out
So
yesterday and said he wants to come back to coaching because I
oh
guess he's
boy.
already burned through his 50 million, I guess. I don't know.
It's
So
probably
so
more.
so Eli, this has been great for folks out there that want to get in touch with you, maybe learn more or talk to you
Yeah.
about doing some work with them. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, shoot me a message on LinkedIn. So my LinkedIn profile is pretty easy to find. And I'm in between roles right now, so doing a little bit of consulting and things like that. So if there's something you need some help with, I'd love to help out. And yeah, just give me a shout and we can talk and all that.
And it will be the real Eli, not your avatar
It will be,
responding.
yeah, it'll be the real me. So yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Sure.
I'm working on the fake version myself for fun, but real Eli is a lot more fun in my opinion.
There you go.
Excellent. Okay, Tracy, the
All
big
right,
finish.
the big finish. So Eli, this has been great. Very insightful and a great topic for our small emerging brand audience. So thank you so much for joining us today. And so, audience, please continue to follow us on our Spotify and Apple, also Instagram. We also post every Tuesday on LinkedIn and all of our other channels, and continue to follow us. And we appreciate it. Also, check us out on our website, www.road the number 2 retail.com. Thanks so much. Enjoyed it.
Good luck out there, folks.